watching it. That is Main Street Media in Utah. I am your host of the Liberty Mom Show, Dalane, England. Liberty Moms are the original secretaries of defense. We are the real defenders of the home front. And we are there when it comes to defending our families and our communities. I'm so happy to have you join us today. We have a great lineup. I hope you find it very interesting. It's something that I care ever so much about. We are going to learn about the Electoral College. And no, that is not a place that people go to college or go to school. It is a place where it is the system set up to elect our president of the United States of America. The way that it was originally set up is what we're going to be discussing, not necessarily the way that we do it now. But I think it's very interesting, and I think it's really important because I have a lot of people are talking about ways that we can change the Electoral College and ways that we can change how we choose and how we elect a president. And I love the way the founders set it up. So we're going to discuss that. We're also going to be discussing the Republican National Convention. It is going on right now. I believe that today is the day 4. We have Chris Kimball, that is one of the electors, or one of the, not electors, delegates from Utah, that is there representing Utah right now. We also have possibly Representative Trevor Lee and Tina Horlocker that may be joining us. It's very exciting there. There's a lot to do, so it is hard to know exactly what time they're going to be free. So we just left it open for them to be able to join us if they can. So hopefully we will have more than one of them join us. But I just want to let you know, if you have listened to any of the debates or the speakers and the people that have been there talking and presenting, I would love to hear what your highlights are, what you think have been inspiring, what you didn't like, who you're concerned about. So feel free. We are going to be doing that after we discuss the Electoral College. So if you would like to call in, I would love to have you join us. The number is 385-899-2134. So write that down, get prepared, and as soon as we get through talking about the Electoral College, we will be taking your calls. 385-899-2134. I will repeat that again in a few minutes. So if you didn't catch it, get your pen or pencil ready and we will repeat it. So the Electoral College is so amazing. I just love it. What a genius idea. This is such a great idea. There were 3 things that the founders spent most of the time, those 4 months, sweating bullets in Independence Hall. 3 things that they spent most of the time discussing. One was representation. How do they make the small states happy and the big states happy, and have them all come together and go, okay, yeah, we can agree with this. So they spent a lot of time trying to figure out how to elect representation and how to make it fair. And as you know, they came up with the House of Representatives determined by the number of population, and then the Senate being equal to senators for every state, regardless of the size, large or small. And then the House of Representatives representing the people, 2-year terms, the Senate, 6-year terms. Because the idea was the senators weren't representing the people. The senators were to represent the states. So one of the other ones was, as you can probably guess, slavery. Huge debate, huge discussion, huge drama and turmoil, very difficult situation. Frankly, all of the states were against slavery at the time, except for 2. But they did want it to be unanimous, and they felt like it was important. We needed to be a united front, one country. It needed to be unanimous. So they put in the Constitution a clause, hope that no one could be imported, no slavery. They didn't use the word slavery, but they could not import people past 18. Now I can't remember the 1812. I'm sorry, for 20 years. After 20 years, they would not, 1802, they could not import any people. And I thought that would make slavery just go away, that it would just end it naturally, just attrition. Unfortunately, it did not. So we have the representation, slavery, and yes, you can guess the other one, and that was how to elect our executive branch, how to elect our president. Now, first of all, you need to know the founders never intended for people to vote for the president. They never intended for anyone to run to be the president. Can you imagine how different that is? No one throws their hat in the ring. No one runs to be president. That was not their idea. The House of Representatives was the one place, the only place people voted for representative government. They voted for their representative every 2 years. That's why it's 2 years. They had to come back, answer to the people every other year. So the people in the House of Representatives were having to answer to their constituents. That's very important. And that is where they felt like the people could stay on top of that. They could get educated, get informed, know their representatives, and they could vote for them or vote for someone else and replace them. The Senate was never designed, and if you read the original Constitution, the Senate was not ever designed to be elected by the people. The senators were elected by the House of Representatives. The different states could choose how they did it, but it was to have the legislative branch, their legislators, their elected representatives who are elected by the people, answer to the people, and were elected directly by the people, indirectly elected their senators through their legislators through the House of Representatives and Senate combined. And those are the ones that elected the senators, because the senator's job, as I said, was to represent the state and to literally protect the states from the federal government, not to represent the interests of the people. That's what the House of Representatives did. But they were very concerned about the federal government, even though they had federalism, they had divided powers, they had structured. The federal government only has these 20 powers, hands off anything else. They still were concerned about tyranny or a consolidation of power. And so they did not want that to happen. And so they designed the senators to be a sentinel or a protector against the federal government coming in and encroaching on the states. So they set it up that way. And then they decided, okay, how can we set up the executive branch, the commander-in-chief, the president of the United States? No, definitely not the people. For several reasons. Did they want the president to run? No. Why not? Because they didn't want anyone to seek this important office. They also didn't want it to cost a ton of money. They didn't want to have all of these people swayed and persuaded by money, by influence, by power, by reputation, by maybe their friends. They knew that people, the citizenry, busy creating a living, raising their families, creating value in their communities, can easily be swayed by propaganda, by influence, by advertisements. They just did not, they knew that would not be a good idea, and they would not get the best people possible to run for the president. So they did not like that idea. And so, of course, they started at the very beginning talking about and debating and coming with ideas of how to elect the president. They went clear till literally the very last day, or second to last day, in trying to decide how to do this, and before they came up with an agreement. Lots of really fun, really interesting ideas. They were definitely thinking outside of the box. So the idea is that they wanted to protect state sovereignty, and they wanted to protect federalism, because that is what the Constitution was designed to do: protect the states and the state sovereignty, and protect federalism, to divide the power between the federal government and the states, not equally, that the federal government would have far less power than the states would have. The states would have far more. If it wasn't specifically given, as in Amendment 10, if it's not specifically given to the federal government, it is forbidden them, and it is given to the states or the people. So they designed the Electoral College to protect state sovereignty and protect federalism. They wanted to elect a president by people who had the opportunity to vet, to study, and to get educated. And then those people would make the decision on who would be a candidate and to run for president. So they wanted the elected representatives to vet who it would be, so that there would be a vetting process, so that it wasn't just throw everybody hat in the ring or whoever wanted to. This is really important, and this is what's so valuable about not only the Electoral College, but the caucus system. The caucus system was designed to elect people that would take time to get educated, to study, and to vet the candidates. And that's what they wanted the Electoral College to do. I want to share a quote from you with Elbridge Gerry. Now, if you remember, Elbridge Gerry was one of the three delegates who did not vote for the Constitution for one reason, and that was because it did not come with a Bill of Rights initially. And they said, we're not voting for it until there's a Bill of Rights, because we think the Bill of Rights are essential. And so we're going to stay fighting and working on the Bill of Rights before we agree on this Constitution. So this is a quote from Elbridge Gerry. He's from Massachusetts. And this is what he said. The evils we experience flow from the excess of democracy. I just love that, because it's, people that are constantly saying our democracies are at risk and we're the threat of losing our democracy. Yeah, we don't have a democracy. We don't want a democracy. The evils we experience flow from the excess of democracy. The people do not want or lack virtue, but are the dupes of pretended patriots. So he says, people have virtue, but they are the dupes of pretended patriots, can easily get falsely swayed by someone who pretends to be a patriot, but who is not. In Massachusetts, it had been fully confirmed by experience that they are daily misled into the most baneful measures and opinions by the false reports circulated by designing men, and which no one on the spot can refute. Okay, so they could understand they didn't want the people who could easily be swayed to make this very important decision. Okay, so the founders came up with this in what I consider an incredible method to elect the president. There's three parts to it. It starts with the nomination. So each state legislature was to appoint or to elect wise people to be electors. Now, the state legislators got to decide, they still do, who and how they chose the electors. The federal government, it's not in the Constitution. In fact, it specifically says in the Constitution, the state legislators, the states and their legislators determine how electors are chosen. They can be appointed, they could be elected, but the legislature or the states get to decide that. Congress was not, they specifically said Congress was not to regulate, to control, or influence the appointment of the presidential electors. This is, again, what constitutional federalism is, and they wanted to protect that. So Utah, we elect them now we do it through the Republican Party or through the party in power. That's how we choose. But every state does it a little bit differently, and every state gets to choose how they elect or choose their electors. And the electors have but one job. They do not choose the president. Electors originally, according to the Constitution, the electors simply chose people that they felt would be excellent people to nominate them to be possibly the president of the United States. So the design was that every elector would choose two people to throw in the ring, to throw their name in the hat. They would, of all the people in the United States, they got to choose two people they thought would be wise and moral and virtuous people that they felt would represent our nation and do a good job as commander-in-chief. So I just want you to take a minute and think if you could choose whose name, if you were an elector, whose name would you put in there? Who would you want? Who would you recommend? You don't have to say that to me, of course, but it's something to think about. Who would you want? So if you're an elector, you chose these two people. Now, the number of electors was determined, that each state was determined by taking their number of representatives and adding it to their two senators. Now, why did they do it that way? They could just say how many representatives you have, that's how many electors you get. But they wanted to give kind of weight that against the large states, against the small states, just the same way they had with the House and the Senate. So they took the number of representatives and then added the senators in. I want you to think about how this really does give kind of a little bit of equality to the small states. Because if you're only doing small states, very much at a disadvantage because they never have as many House of Representatives delegation, congressional delegation as the large states, obviously. Adding the two helps to regulate that and kind of balance that out. So that gives a little bit of a slight advantage to the small states over the large states. They wanted to make sure the large states or the cities did not take control over who became president of the United States. They did not want them to have full control and to have overweighted power to make that decision. If you think about, you've got a small state like Wyoming that just has one representative, they would have one elector. Then when you add the Senate in, now you have 3 electors, but every elector gets 2 votes. So instead of having 1 elector, they have 2 votes. Now you have 3 electors they get 2 names each. That's 6. So you're taking it from 2 to 6. So you can kind of see how that does help the small states have a little bit more say in this electoral college rather than if they only did took your number of House of Representatives, not adding the Senate in. Hope that makes sense. One of the things just to clarify, so every state added up their number of representatives. Like Utah, that's 4. Used to be 3, now it's 4. We add our 2 senators in. That's 2 for every state. So we have 6 electors in Utah, and they each get 2 nominees apiece. And so that would be 4 delegation plus the 2, that's 6. So in Utah, we have 12. California had 53. Now they have 52. So they have 52 Congress people or 52 House of Representatives. Then you add in the 2 senators. So that's 54. Then you double that for the number of people that they have that they get to nominate. Okay, and then you think of, we did Wyoming. So that kind of gives you a little bit of an idea of how that works and how it balances. One of the requirements, so electors could never be representatives or senators, nor could they hold any other office of trust or profit under the U.S. government. They wanted the electors to be regular United States citizens. That's what they wanted, the regular people. But people who would be people that were seen as wise and were seen as honorable and virtuous people. So, but not people in positions of power. They didn't want them to be influenced. They wanted those electors to have their very own vote. They did not want them to be swayed by other people in positions of power. They didn't want them to be beholden to anyone. They wanted them to set up in a way that would protect any kind of a payoff or cabal or anything like that. So to make this happen, they set up a system that those who were nominated they would not be elected. They would not elect. They would just nominate. And those who would elect could not nominate. So again, division of power. Don't you love this? So if you're an elector, you didn't elect the person to be president. You simply nominated people. If you were a person who voted, which originally they were going to have the Senate elect from the people that the electors sent in, the names they sent in, that the Senate would elect those people, they changed it to the House of Representatives. So the electors sent in names, the House of Representatives would take those names and vote. So, but again, they didn't want the electors to elect, which sounds kind of funny, doesn't it? They just wanted them to nominate, and then they wanted the House of Representatives to elect. So we kind of think of the word vote as like the final election or the final decision, but with the electors, they say vote, but really they're just nominating. They're not really voting. So they don't have the final decision. They're simply casting a vote of who they feel would be a good candidate. So they're casting a vote or nominating who they think would be good. So each elector chose or nominated 2 people. And then I'm just going to refer to Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3, because that is where it is listed in the Constitution. Okay, so it says, each state shall appoint in such manner as the legislature therefore may direct a number of electors equal to the number of the Senate and representative to which the state may be entitled, but no senator or representative or person holding office of trust or profit under the United States Constitution shall be appointed as an elector. So I think that's pretty clear. Hopefully that is. And the electors, they shall, okay, this is really important. Article 2, Section 1, Clause 3. The electors shall meet in their respective states. So they do not go back to Philadelphia or DC or meet. The electors meet in their respective states and vote by ballot for 2 persons, of whom at least one shall not be an inhabitant of the same state of the elector. So they submit 2 names. One can be from their state. One cannot be from their state. Again, think about, why did they want to do that? They didn't want to have back scratching, collusion. They wanted them to think as a nation, who would be the best representative? Not because I want him to represent my state, but who would represent the nation as a whole the best way. So then when they got through submitting these 2 names, they could both be from other states, but one had to be, but one could be from their state. And then when they made this list of who they wanted to vote for, the number of the votes for each, then they made a list, then they shall sign and certify and transmit it sealed to the seat of the government. And see, this was really wise too. They didn't say to Philadelphia or Pennsylvania, they said to the seat of the government, because that hadn't changed a few times. So they put right in the Constitution that it should be submitted. So once the electors in the state made their list, they'd get together in their state, they each submitted the 2 names, they made the list, then they put down in the list by the number of who got the most, by the number of votes. Then they put it in an envelope, sealed it, and then they sent it by mail to the seat of the government. So I love that. They did not want them to meet as other electors in a big group, like the Republican National Committee is meeting right now. They didn't want that for this process, because they didn't want them to, again, horse trade or collude with each other, or like, oh, let's get together. I'll vote for this guy if you'll go for this guy. This one from our state, from this one from our state. Or they wanted them to make independent decisions, again, based on who would be wise and virtuous and who would represent the United States best. So they met in their same state, and they also met on the same day. So every elector across the nation, originally in the 13 colonies or the 13 states, but now 50, they all meet on the same day. So that is really kind of cool that they all made on the same day. Again, so they can't horse trade or share or tell each other. They just met on the very same day. And they can all make that decision. They can't converse with each other. Then they nominated, and they wanted the representatives to not just represent their own states, but the interest of the nation as a whole. So they make the list, they send it in, the number of votes for each person, and this is where the electors certify the elections. I would like to read from Mr. Hamilton, And this was recorded in the Federalist Papers. And this is what he said about the list of nominations. It should be made from men most capable of analyzing the qualities adapted to the station. They were to analyze the candidates. They weren't to be salesmen to excite the uninformed masses. So I love that. They were to analyze the candidates, not salesmen to excite the uninformed masses. That is really kind of telling. That says a lot. Because not that the masses are ignorant or stupid or untrustworthy, but they were uninformed. The masses are uninformed because they are not dealing with this regularly. Again, going on from Mr. Hamilton, and acting under circumstances favorable to the deliberation and to a judicious combination of all the reason and inducements which were proper to govern their choice. They wanted wise, virtuous people. A small number of persons selected by their fellow citizens from the general masses, not tied to the government, will be most likely to possess the information and discernment requisite to such complicated investigation. Choose wise men to select and nominate the best possible candidates. Alexander Hamilton said nothing was more to be desired than that every practicable obstacle should be opposed to cabal. So that is what Alexander Hamilton said. So they send in, and now back at the seat of the government, it is time to open the sealed votes, to open these sealed nominations. Okay, so again, the Constitution tells us exactly what they should do, and I just want to refer to it because, so the President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the certificates, and the vote shall then be counted. So they want that at the seat, they have the Senate president opens, but he does it in front of all the Senate and all the House members, and the votes are counted. So at this designated time, and they have a time in the Constitution where they wanted the states at the beginning of the year, and the House and the Senate get to determine that. They had a designated time. And so then they open it up and they tally in the presence and the House with the witnesses. They are the witnesses to witness it, and they tally it up. And then according to the Constitution, they narrow the field to the top 5 candidates. Now they take the top 5 on the list. And if no one candidate gets more than 50%, then the House would vote and choose from those top 5 candidates who would become the president. Now, they didn't really think that there would be a time where, very often, where one person, because, I mean, you think of all these states and then 2 candidates and they all have their own interests. They didn't think it would happen very often that one person would get more than 50%. But they made it like if one person gets more than 50%, that's it. We'll take them. Or if 2 people got more than 50%, it could actually, mathematically, up to 3 people could get more than 50% because of the number of votes. But they felt like it was almost impossible. It was mathematically possible, but not very likely. But so they figured most of the time this president would be elected by the House of Representatives. As I said, they originally thought they would have the Senate do it, but then they decided to have the Senate open it and tally it. Again, division of powers, and then the House of Representatives, because again, they're closer to the people, that they would elect out of the top 5 candidates. All right, so this brings us to the question that most of you probably know. Washington was elected unanimously to be the president of the United States. Because people are like, that's pretty amazing, because they think that all the people, the citizens of the United States voted, which they did not. So, but what did happen is that every single elector across the country, no matter what state they were from, with all of their electors, the small states and the small states, casting 2 nominations. Every single elector in the entire United States listed General George Washington as one of their nominations. They all gave 2, but every single one of them nominated George Washington. So he was elected unanimously. Now, that was both in 1789 when we held our first election and George Washington was elected. He was elected by every nominee, by every elector, but that also happened in 1792. On the second, after 4 years, he was also nominated by every single elector in that one too. So, but here's what happened. After those 2 terms George Washington served, he wanted to make it so clear. He wanted to set an example, a perfect example, and make it very clear that he did not want to run again, and he did not want anyone to submit his name again to be the president of the United States. So he felt like 2 terms was enough, and he wanted to set an example that no one run more than 2 terms. And so he put in his farewell address, he had it printed in the newspaper so that everyone would know that he was done. And he put right in there that he would not be accepting another nomination and that they should nominate someone else. And he really hoped that no one would nominate him again. But in 1796, after he had served 8 years, next time to elect, do you think that anybody submitted his name? If you guessed 2 people, 2 electors, you would be right. 2 electors still, even after he said, please don't, and even after he put in the newspaper and made it known to the entire United States, 2 electors still, they loved George Washington so much. And probably because they could put 2 people's names in, like, we're going to still give George Washington our vote, but we will also nominate someone else. So in 1796, John Adams had been the VP because the second highest vote getter when George Washington was elected unanimously, the second highest was John Adams. And so according to the Constitution and the Electoral College, the second highest vote getter became the vice president. So he was nominated and received the second highest and became our vice president, which happened twice. And so he became the vice president twice. Then in 1796, the third election, who got the highest number? It wasn't unanimous, but John Adams again was the highest on that third election. He was the highest. And who was the second highest vote getter? Because that person would become the vice president. And that was Thomas Jefferson. So Thomas Jefferson became the second highest. And that means he became the vice president of John Adams. And as you know, John Adams was a Federalist. And as you know, Thomas Jefferson was an anti-Federalist. So even though they were best friends, they were absolutely best friends and loved each other, their families did things together, they really enjoyed each other. Their families did things together, even went to Europe together. They would debate and discuss political issues, and we're still friends. I love that. That's how it should be. But they weren't the best of friends as being president and vice president because they thought differently, totally different ideologies as far as a lot of things. One of them being the freedom of speech. And anyway, it turned out not so well for a little while, quite a little while. But that is how they became president and vice president. And then because of the division and the lack of getting along, we did have a constitutional amendment to change that so that the vice president was not the second elected. It was the president actually nominated and chose someone to run with them so that they would be more aligned with each other. So So that's how it works when you get one candidate getting over 50%, getting the majority, because they wanted the executive branch, the president, to be elected by majority, not plurality. It's very important. I think it's really important. And so, but they didn't foresee that happening very often. It just happened to happen on the first 3 times. So what they decided was, if when the vote goes to the House, because no one gets a majority of vote, each state receives 1 vote. So it's not like in the House of Representatives, it's like all of the representatives get their own vote. No, it's each state gets 1 vote. In the Senate, it would have been each state getting 2 votes. And that would have been quite similar. But they gave it to the House to vote because they're closer to the people, but they only get 1 vote instead of getting, like for Utah, it would be 4, California would be 52. It would be equal. So that's kind of a priority to the smaller states over the large states. And why did they decide to do that? Because they were very wise, and they wanted state sovereignty, and they wanted federalism, and they did not want the large states or the large cities to rule and control every time who would be our president. So they wanted the small states to have as much say as the large states in who would be the executive branch and represent the United States. So the equal vote by each state preserves that principle of state sovereignty and federalism. They wanted also the mentality of the president didn't represent a state. The president represented the entire nation and wanted them to be the president of the United Union. And it takes a majority of the states. In this case, a majority of the states is required to win, not a majority of the population. Of course, the people didn't vote, so that had nothing to do with it, but it did take a majority of the states. So it was set up to assume that there would be no political parties. They didn't want political parties. They didn't want that to happen, that each state would submit the best candidate it could possibly provide or know of in not just their state, but in the nation. But we're more likely to know people from our state that would be good, so that's understandable that they would submit 1 person from their state. And I just want you to think how different all of the millions and billions of dollars that are spent on presidential campaigns, all the time and energy we spend on our candidates, and how different, and the infighting and the way that the division that happens, and all of that is virtually gone. And why do we want to elect somebody who wants to be president? I really think that's a great question, and I love the answer to it. I just really love this Electoral College. I think it was absolutely genius, and nothing is ever perfect and never implemented perfectly, but I just think this is a great system. So, we'll talk about this in weeks to come, but one of our former governors of Utah wrote a letter saying, I don't like how we nominate or elect president. I think we should change it. And he actually wants to change it to a regional representation, which I think is so much worse than what we have and so much farther from what we originally had, which is the Electoral College. I would like to see us implement more of the principles of the Electoral College, not less of them. And we will be discussing that. I'm going to we will do that on another show. But that is our lesson on the Electoral College. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you felt very enlightened by it. And I really hope mostly that you loved the ideas and the principles of our amazing founders, and that you would absolutely want to work with me to implement that. And let's go back to it. I want to remind you, you are listening to KMMU, Main Street Media, Utah. You can go to kmmu.org. We are also live on X, on Rumble, YouTube, and of course, our website, kmmu.org. I would like to remind you of our call-in number, which is 385-899-2134. And you are welcome to call in at any time, because we are now going to shift gears and we are going to be talking about the RNC, the National Republican Convention, or convention. And so I am just going to remind our delegation at the Republican National Convention that are there that if they want to call in right now, we would love to have them. It is very hard for them to whatever, they're doing a lot of different things. So it's hard to schedule with them because they don't know exactly what's going to be going at any given time. And the reason they're there is to be there, and we don't want to take anything away from what they're there. So if you want to call in, if you've been listening, call in, or if you have people that you particularly want to talk about, I would just love to hear what you have to say. I have been trying to listen as much as possible, and I've taken some notes. So until someone calls in, I got the microphone. I'm going to share I am going to share some of the things that I found that have been so interesting and enlightening. And I have been to the RNC and it really is exciting. There's so much great energy. It's very positive. There's great energy. It's very, very fun. I have to say, it is very, very fun. And if you ever have an opportunity to go, although I did have the opportunity this year, I didn't take advantage of it, which I'm somewhat regretting right this particular moment, but I just didn't really have time. But it is so much fun and so exciting. And I do think this is a very exciting year to be there. And one thing that I have been able to notice, even not being there, and as I've talked to friends that are there, it really has a great feel for unity. I think that President Trump has really done a good job of bringing people together and inviting and really trying to create a unity. And I like unity. It's a good thing. It's exciting. I like unity, but I really only like to be unified with people that I'm like-minded with. I don't want to make it so the Republican Party doesn't stand for our values and our ideals and our platform. And I love the principles in our platform, and I really want to bring people into the party that are aligned with those. I want to educate people to be aligned with those principles, because the principles of the Republican Party are the principles of the Constitution of the United States of America. But I want to stay true to those. I don't want to bring in people that are not aligned. But I do love, it's been very fun. They've had a diverse speakers from all walks of life, and I love that. And that is really exciting. I'm going to start talking about Nikki Haley. And the reason why is because she ran against President Trump, and she kind of was the last one to drop out. And I do like this. So she was the former governor of South Carolina. She was also President Trump's ambassador to the United Nations, which I will not hide at all. The United Nations is they are not a good organization. They are not good. They are anti-God, anti-family, anti-religion. They are anti-morality. Their platform is not aligned with either the Constitution of America or the values of America. And I love Mike Lee. If you hate him for every other reason, I don't care. You have to love him for this reason. You don't have to. But I do, the fact that he wants to get us out of the United Nations. And I love that. And I think that is so important. And not to change the subject, but let's support Senator Mike Lee in that and make sure that happens, because it is totally anti-American. So she was the ambassador to the United Nations. And I have to say, I thought she was a great governor of South Carolina. And I also thought she was a great ambassador for the United Nations, because she didn't just cape. I think she did. I don't know. I wasn't there, but from where I sit, it looked like to me like she did a really great job. I'm open to being wrong on that. She got up and spoke. She came, and President Trump invited her to speak. It was kind of last minute because it was after he got shot. And she accepted, which I was very pleased about. And she said, I want to make it really clear that President Donald Trump, prior President Donald Trump, has my strong endorsement, period. And she asked her supporters to vote for President Trump. And she's like, a vote for Biden is a vote for Kamala Harris. I think that's a really good point because we all know, I don't even know if President Biden is even going to be in the race. But whether he is or isn't, he's not running our country. He is not the one making decisions. He's simply a body, barely warm body. And he's not making the decisions. That's very obvious. And so she said, if you vote for him or if he were to get in, he wouldn't be in for long. You would be having Kamala Harris as the president. And neither one of those are acceptable. And so she said, I acknowledge that we, as Americans, we don't all agree, even as Republicans, we don't always agree with President Trump all the time. I certainly don't. But she said, I want to really speak to those people who are mostly anti-Trumpers, which I thought was really great. We don't have to agree 100% of the time to vote for him. I think that's a really good point. To keep America strong, and to keep America safe, the Democrats are putting our freedoms in danger. And I'm just saying things that she said. I'm paraphrasing. I'm reading from my notes. Obama supported Putin under Obama's administration, Putin invaded Crimea. Under Biden's administration, Putin invaded Ukraine. Under Trump's administration, we had no invasions. We had no wars. Because whether you hate Trump or love him, I don't care how much you hate him. I don't care how much you think he is immoral and a terrible person. You have to admit something very powerful about President Trump is that we did not have any wars. And there's a huge list. And I'm going to discuss that list at some point, a huge list of the reasons that you should be supporting President Trump, no matter how much you dislike him, hate him. Do not let hate stand in your way of your love for America, your love for freedom, your love for the sovereignty of this amazing nation. Please do not let your hate for one man and do not have blinders on to see, okay, he's got these weaknesses. Agreed, all over the place. Agreed, totally. But can you let go of those and see all of the amazing things that he has done for our country? And I love that Nikki Haley was able to do that and see that, because, when you run against someone, you're in pain when you don't win. It hurts. And especially because they've said things not particularly super nice about each other. And so you can let your own emotions and own feelings get in the way. And I love the fact that Nikki Haley did not let that stand in the way. Okay. So she talked about what a strong President Trump is. And he is a strong president. A strong president doesn't start wars. A strong president prevents wars. Trump all the way. He got us out of the insane Iran nuclear deal, and he had the toughest sanctions. And I think everyone can admit he is very respected across the world. If you don't think so, you're just being taught and fed different invalid and incorrect information, because even though they might not like him, they respected him because they know he's tough and he is not going to put up with stuff that's wrong. Okay, so that's my take on Nikki Haley. Anybody want to call in and give another side? Awesome. Or any other speakers that you felt were just amazing, that you felt were, I loved. There's something about everyone's speech that I think really stood out, was a great tagline, just something fun or powerful. Our number is 385-899-2134. Okay, so I'm going to talk about Governor DeSantis. Now, Governor DeSantis, as I think everybody knows, is the governor of Florida. Amazing job as governor. He has done such an awesome job. And he also ran against President Trump, but he did immediately endorse President Trump, which I think, and I'm totally open to being wrong, I think Nikki Haley did immediately after dropping out, but I know that Governor DeSantis did. As soon as he left the race, he endorsed President Trump. But he talked about, and I think this was really huge for me. This is really powerful because when President Biden, and I believe that it was in a speech, but either that or it was in the debate, he said that none of our servicemen had lost their lives under his stewardship, under his administration. I couldn't believe it. I was really literally moved to tears when he said that, because I'm like, how could anyone be that stupid or be or lie like that? Like, how could anyone not know? And of course, immediately came the 13 servicemen that were killed unnecessarily, extremely unnecessarily, under President Biden's lack of discretion. I don't want to call it discretion, but lack thereof. Or, I mean, he had all the power. He could have avoided that. Absolutely no excuse at all. No one. That should never have happened, and no one in that position should have ever left our 13 servicemen members there and allowed them to be killed. I'm just sick about it. I'm still just sick about it. And so DeSantis said, we need a commander-in-chief who can lead 24 hours a day and 7 days a week, not just 10 to 4. And he really talked about those 13 servicemen, and I just think that was really, really important. And this was one of his really famous lines that I think will go down. He said, "America cannot afford former years of weekend at Bernie's presidency." Oh, very funny. I think everybody really got a kick out of that. He talked about how we have open borders and allowing millions of illegal people to come into America. And the liberals and the Democrats are all for the open borders, and let everybody, they act like they're compassionate and they're all for it, unless you send any of them to Martha's Vineyard, and then they come unglued. And that is a really big deal. I do not believe that it is compassionate to open our borders. I do not believe that is compassionate. I believe in compassion. I believe that we should be very compassionate. And compassion says, come through our front door, come through and be treated like a U.S. citizen. Come through, don't be a criminal. We care about you. We know you have so much to offer. We want to make you a citizen. We want to treat you equally. And so come through the front door. DeSantis also talked about how Biden has banned gas vehicles, which is not American, not a good idea, and it is it is really destructive to our ability to get around and to move and to be able to the free market. It's really going to be very destructive, and it does actually assist inflation in going up. It is a really big part of inflation. And he also talked about what I think is really important is the unelected bureaucracy and how much power they have, and how much he has weaponized political power against their opponents. He talked about how they've weaponized the Second Amendment and tried very hard to take away our Second Amendment. And of course, one of the most egregious evils in our country is gender ideology, and that the liberals and the Democrats have added that into, from our military, even our military, to our schools, to our kindergartners, in our businesses. This gender ideology has really taken over our nation, and it, again, is not aligned with truth, the laws of nature, or nature's God, and it weakens. It is part of DEI, which is very destructive. And I like this. He said DEI is not what it's claimed to be. It is actually division, exclusion, and indoctrination. I love that. DEI is division, exclusion, and indoctrination. We have to get that message out. We need to talk about that and share it and spread it. I've also heard DEI be called didn't earn it. I love that one too. didn't earn. You're put in there because of your race or your sex or your ideology, not because of your merit. So DEI is didn't earn it, or division, exclusion, and indoctrination. Okay. Okay. Looking to see if we had any callers. Feel free. Okay. He also talked about in our republic, our values are aligned with the Constitution. The Republican Party, our values are aligned with the founding of this nation and our Constitution. And that is totally true. Try reading the Republican platform. Now, I'm not very excited about the new platform, but I will admit I haven't read it yet. But I know a lot of things have been taken out of it, which really, really really concerns me. And we need to work at getting that back in. But the state Republican Party and our county Republican Party and our former national Republican platform is amazing and totally aligned with our Constitution. Okay, and he talked about voter ID being required and only letting citizens vote in our elections, and voter ID being required to vote. Wow, what a novel idea. Yeah, we've been doing it forever, and how wonderful that is. And yeah, we need to restore that. That's a really big deal. Okay, so if my awesome screen caller or producer wants to chime in, I would be totally fine with that. Feel free to chime in at any time. Dwayne, feel free. Dalane and Dwayne.
I'm not sure you want me here, Dalane, but
I'm all about freedom of speech. You can say anything you want to. I'm totally good. I don't mind if you say something I disagree with, because this is a platform where we get to debate and discuss our ideas. Bring it on.
Well, I'm just fascinated by the whole election thing, and you were talking basically about the whole setup for the Electoral College, and why has it changed? I mean, it's different than what the Constitution says, and I know there was a constitutional amendment to elect senators, just
17th Amendment 17.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why did they change that?
Well, that's a really great question. And that got changed because like all systems, they're only as good as the people that put them into play. And just because you have this great system, there are movements and people who want to dismantle America, even back then. And they're just like, well, it wasn't perfect and it wasn't being executed perfectly. And so they're like, and they actually said to people what is being said right now to dismantle our caucus system. They told people, well, shouldn't your vote count? Your vote doesn't count. Don't you think you should vote for a senator? And it's not like every senator was doing an amazing job protecting the states from the federal government. It wasn't like there were no senators that were going back there making money and colluding with other senators and doing things that weren't in our best interest. There were senators that weren't doing their job. So it was easy prey to go back to the states and say, hey, these senators aren't doing, and you aren't getting to elect them. They're being elected by your legislators, and shouldn't you get to vote? It's the exact same argument that is being used right now to dismantle our caucus system and our caucus convention system.
Yeah, I see that happening. So
someone from these right-wing wackos and these elitists that go and they get to choose your candidates. You don't want that. You should vote yourself. And so that's what they did. Yeah. They used that argument and it worked. So now they're using it again to dismantle our caucus convention.
And when was that amendment passed?
That's a good question. And if I had my Constitution with me, which I should, I don't. It was 1907 or 1913. I'm sorry, I can't remember.
Which amendment was that? 17th?
What's that? The 17th Amendment. The 16th Amendment was the amendment that they were both passed together at the same time. The 16th Amendment is when they allowed the federal government to start taxing individual income tax, rather than getting the money from the state. Prior to that, the states sent in money. So if the federal government is spending money on Ukraine, and our state of Utah said, excuse me, that's not constitutional. That's not the proper role. We're not sending you money for that. So we really had federalism because we could say, nope, you're not supposed to be involved in education. We're not sending you money for education.
Well, the Googler tells me it was 1917.
Okay, so, 1917.
Yeah.
Well, see, I got, kind of close. I got wrong order. So 1917, the 16th and 17th Amendments were passed.
So do you know anything about the history of it? How did it get pushed through? Because it's one of the things that I've always been curious about, and I don't know how that ever happened.
Yeah, okay. Well, what they did is they threatened a constitutional convention. The states, you had a small group of people, just like what we have right now, saying, well, let's do a constitutional convention to get there's several of them. One is for term limits, and one that's really taking it's got a lot of momentum, is the constitutional, to do a constitutional amendment or a constitutional convention to do so we can't spend any more money. So
a budget limit. A balanced budget.
Okay. Yeah. So that's really taken off in quite a few states, Utah being one. We've passed an amendment or not an amendment, but a resolution to hold a constitutional convention to pass a balanced budget amendment. That doesn't mean we won't spend a lot of money. It means we will have to raise taxes because we'll have to balance the budget. Because it doesn't mean they have to reduce spending. It doesn't even have anything in there about reducing spending. It just says they have to balance the budget, and they can spend more money. I just have to raise more taxes to do it.
Well, and I know there's a bunch of people trying to convene a convention of states.
That's what we're talking about. And that's what they threatened to, but they never did it. But they got the states to say, you know what, if we it is amazing to me. They got states to sign on by telling them that an individual income tax would never be more than they would never tax more than your first $3,000 of income. It would never be more than, so it would just be a small amount, and it would help us get out of debt. And we were in debt, and they're like, this will help us as a nation get out of debt, and it will never be more than, so it's going to just really, just kind of be fair to everyone. It would never be more than $3,000. How long do you think that lasted?
Yeah, so the income tax and the general election of senators, that was what were the amendments?
16 and 17.
And they passed in 1913. Wow.
Things have
changed with the income tax, that's for sure.
What's that?
Things have changed with the income tax, haven't they?
Yes. Well, they've changed. They both changed because, we did the 16th Amendment where the senators are elected. But think of how much that changed our nation. That totally changed. So now senators run like they're representatives, only now they're in there for 6 years. And now they act like they're representing the people instead of representing the state. They don't answer to the legislators. They answer to the people. And people, as our founding fathers constantly said, like big time, they are like, we do not want what did Alexander Hamilton say? We do not want the uninformed masses. Not to say that the masses aren't educated or intelligent or virtuous, but they are uninformed because they're not dealing with this all the time. And so they wanted the legislators who were much more informed, and they wanted the senators to go back and answer to the informed legislators. The legislators should call in Mike Lee. They can call in Mitt Romney and say, why did you vote for that increase? Why are you voting to send money here? Why did you vote for those huge omnibus bills? What are you doing? That doesn't represent our state. We do not want you to do that. But now the legislators can call them in. They don't answer to the legislators. They answer to the people. The legislators don't elect them or unelect them. The people do. And so it changed the dynamics of our nation so much. And you see where the spending, since that time, the spending has gone up and then the social programs have skyrocketed because now they're like selling social programs to the people, saying, I'm going to go back and get you health care that's free, and I'm going to get you, this for your job and for your education. And so it just completely changed the dynamics of our nation. And the founders were wise. And we needed to just start electing more principled senators instead of getting rid of the system. And that's my opinion, and I have a strong one. So, all right, if you have any other questions.
Amendments are hard to get passed. I remember I turned 18 right when they passed the 26th Amendment, and I feel like I've been pandered to ever since.
Right. Yeah, you have.
Okay, I have a caller. Hang on just a second. Let me see if I can get him
fantastic.
On the line. Let me see if I can get him on the line.
Okay, and we're going to talk about some of the other speakers that have been speaking at the Republican National Convention. And if you want to call in, feel free, 385-899-2134. And hopefully we'll have...
Hello, is this Bob?
Yeah, hi.
This is Dwayne, and I was busy talking to Dalane, and I'm going to pop you in, okay? You got questions for Dalane?
Well, she wanted me to call in and talk about the RNC speakers from last night.
Yeah.
Okay, hang on just
you'd like to share.
You're here.
Bob, hi, welcome, Bob. How are you? Hi, Bob.
Here you go. Let's see if this works.
Hi, Dalane.
Can you hear him, Dalane? Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, hi, Dalane. I can hear you.
Bob. Hi, welcome. So I'm trusting you've had a chance to listen or watch some of the Republican National Convention.
Oh, absolutely.
I was sure you would. So tell us, what are some highlights for you? Who have you enjoyed? Who do you think, or who has said something interesting? What's your take on that?
Well, there's several, but I'm gonna say, just like you know how dogs notice other dogs, right? Well, veterans notice other veterans, and I really like that guy, Sergeant William Peckrell, the 98-year-old gentleman who spoke to us about.
Oh, Bob!
He
made me cry. He was amazing. He made me laugh and cry. Wasn't he awesome?
He was. In fact, he's the one guy. Both my adult children, I texted one. I said, hey, come on down here and watch this guy. And the other one, I said, hey, come here, watch this guy, right? So I made sure they booked, because I said, you're not going to get to see very many World War II veterans talk at the mic anymore. They're kind of getting precious.
They've always been precious, and now they're rare.
Yeah, that's a better way to put it. I agree. But I really liked it. And look, we're talking about 80-year-olds being too old. That guy at 98, my wife pointed out, he's not even wearing glasses, right? He's reading his notes, and
Wasn't that amazing? He's 98 and been married for 76 years and has 11 children. He's a hero in every way.
Yeah. It really is. I love hearing from another generation, right? And to hear him say, I would storm those beaches again today.
Oh, Bob, can you even imagine? What a great man. I love that. So for people who didn't hear it, give the whole entire part.
Well, he was just saying that President Trump is great, and how he was part of the D-Day invasion, at Normandy, when we were making the big push to get into Europe. And I think he said Hitler was dead at that point, right? So they knew they were probably going to win. And I did a little reading today. It said that he was on the second wave of the invasion, right? Which is why we can probably hear from him, because I think most of the first wave,
most of the first wave was not. They went to heaven. Yeah, they went right to heaven.
Yeah, there was blood in the water. And then I did a little more reading about him. When he got, on the continent there in Europe, his platoon leader got shot. And he grabbed the guy, took him into a basement where there was no heat. They stayed overnight. They said the Germans were walking around on top of him, but they never got caught. And his feet got frozen, but they made it out alive. So I mean, he's a multiple times hero, and I thought it was a great choice to have him there. Right? We've got a
I did too, Bob. I thought he was phenomenal. He was so great. I invite everyone to look him up. And did you catch his name? Because I didn't write fast enough.
I will. I will. It's Sergeant William Peckrell, Pekrull. I'll text it later, and he's 98 years old. And then the other one that made a big impression, and I didn't really catch her name, or I don't remember it, but it was Fentanyl Mom, right? Because her son died.
Oh, the Fentanyl Mom. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Yes.
Fentanyl Mom. That her son died, and I like how she said it. Not of an overdose, because he wasn't trying to do drugs. He just took a pill that had fentanyl on it, and he died from poisoning because of that. And she was right. She laid the blame at Joe Biden for his lax border policy. So let the drugs get across.
She was very powerful. And did you notice? I'm sorry, what was that?
Well, she blames the Biden administration for not securing the border and letting all these drugs in. And she could have gone further, right? I mean, she didn't have a daughter that got taken into sex trafficking, but all these things are going on. The Democrats tell us they're against slavery. Then why wouldn't they be against the sex trafficking that an open border is allowing, right?
The most amount of slavery we have today is sex slavery. And we're participating.
That's a good point. You're right. It's horrible, right? So I thought she made a really good point. We a secure border for our nation, but also just to protect our people, right? I mean, who doesn't have a front door?
Absolutely. Who doesn't have a front door? And have we not always wanted people to come through? We have always had an open door. Are you there, Bob?
That's right. But they got to be subject to inspection, right? They can't come in with fentanyl. And we want people, but we also want to see how many we want, right? It's up to every country to determine that.
Yes, and we want to know who they are. We want to know they're not criminals, not sick, don't have deadly diseases, and we don't want traffickers. We don't want criminals coming in here. We want people that want to be Americans and want to assimilate, not to destroy America, but to assimilate into America. Now, I'm sure you noticed the audience. I don't think there was a dry eye in the audience. Like, I was crying, and honestly, my husband, who is pretty soft, he tends to cry, but we were both crying at what she was sharing. It was, and her strength to get up and share her story and tell her story. She was amazing. She's a true hero, and she said, like, now my voice, I still have a voice. He doesn't, but my voice is to share and try to protect other people from this.
Right.
Yeah, she was very powerful.
No, she made a great point, and she said it's too late for her son, but it's not too late for the rest of you. She's made a sacrifice, just like the parents that lost their kids in the pullout from Afghanistan. Those families that got up there and spoke about the 13 lost. Pulling out of Afghanistan, and they couldn't believe Joe Biden said there were no losses under his presidency. It was stunning, but the fact is maybe he doesn't honestly remember.
It was stunning and unthinkable. No, we know that Joe Biden has a habit of not telling the truth. So we don't know why he said something that's not true, but we can, it is entirely possible that he didn't remember, and just as possible, if not more likely, that he didn't tell the truth. But neither one of those are acceptable. When 13 people died at your hand, you sure as outer darkness ought to remember them.
Delane, we have Seth calling in. So
okay.
Bob, thank you for your call. I'm gonna drop Seth in.
You bet.
Bob, thank you so much. Thank you for your great words. Appreciate it.
Let's see if I can get Seth on here. Hang on.
Okay.
Let me see if he's. Hello, Seth. Are you there?
Hello. Yes, I'm here.
Dalane,
Hi,
can you
Seth.
hear him?
Yes, I can hear you. Thank you, Seth. Welcome. So we're talking about the, I'm sure you know, we're talking about the people that have been speaking at the Republican National Convention. What highlights have stood out to you? Who have you enjoyed or not enjoyed? Are there any specific moments you'd like to share with us?
Yeah, could I share too if I go real quick?
Absolutely. Sure.
Take all the time you need, Seth. Go ahead.
I think the most important speech, in my opinion, yesterday was J.D. Vance's. He gave a similar speech to the Heritage Foundation about a week or two ago, and he highlighted that America is more than just an idea.
Oh,
And
I
think
love
that's
that.
really important in our movement right now, because if America was just an idea, you could move it to any place with any people. But he said it's more than an idea, it's also a people. And we have to remember that it's in our blood. It's in our DNA. I think he's fighting for a lot of regional culturalism. I'm from Utah. I've been here my whole life. Multiple generations of my family have been here. And it's important because we hold these moral values that our ancestors have passed down upon us. And I think it's really crucial that he highlighted that. And that's why we can't have huge amounts of illegal immigration come into our country and subvert our culture and the morals that we stand for.
Boy, that you really nailed it, because yeah, it's our home. It's a country with values and principles, and it's our home. And we want people to come here, but legally through the front door and assimilate and become Americans. That's what we want. We don't want people to change our country into some third world country. We want them to come and assimilate and be Americans. Yeah, that was a great one. Yes, he gave quite a lot, and he gave quite a great speech, and it was a very long speech too. And I do love hearing his story. It's quite remarkable. Okay.
And now for my other favorite moment is
Yes.
because I get that the J.D. Vance speech, it was a little more esoteric. It was for the political junkies that really follow this and understand. Now, I've been watching the RNC with my wife, who is not a political junkie. She's more of a normie. She doesn't really follow politics that close. And for the 8 years that Trump has been in the media, she's just heard that he's kind of a vile, gross, disgusting old man. And I think that Kaya Trump's speech, Trump's granddaughter, was huge for suburban women who watch that and realize that Trump is somebody's grandpa. And there have been multiple moments at the convention where his grandkids have been around hugging him, telling anecdotes about their stories with their grandpa. And I think that that's really important to just humanize him. And I couldn't believe it, but I heard my wife call Donald Trump adorable and cute when he's smiling and seeing the reactions of these people who love him and highlight that he's a great father and a great grandfather.
Seth, that is such a good point, because I have friends that hate Donald Trump, and I just like, well, what do you know about him? And what they know is what they've been spoon-fed and what they've been taught by haters, by the media and people that hate him, but they really don't know him. And he's definitely a flawed individual. He's not perfect, but I'm having a hard time finding anyone perfect except for Jesus Christ. So I think he's in good company with the rest of us.
Well, and one of the things I always say is, if you look at a person's children and see how they turned out, it's a good sign. I mean, look at Joe Biden's children and look at Donald Trump's children. They're upstanding. Right. They're just great people.
His children really do him. They speak very well. I mean, they say a lot about him. Seth, did you have anything else that you would like to share?
Yeah, we have to hurry and highlight that Joe Biden's youngest granddaughter, they don't even acknowledge their granddaughter, who was Hunter Biden's bastard child, and they won't even acknowledge her as one of their grandchildren. In fact, they tried to sue the mother for the last name that she couldn't go by Biden. And I think that shows a lot about a grandparent, to not even acknowledge that their grandchild exists.
Yeah,
and
I find it really sad.
It is really sad. And I just want to highlight how unified the Republican Party is right now for the first time in my lifetime. And it seems like the last couple election cycles, it's the Democrats that fall in order and they're all unified around one person. And to hear Ron DeSantis speak volumes of Donald Trump after their pretty bloody campaign against each other, I think it shows that as a party, the Republicans are unified, and it gives me a lot of hope going into the future. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so much for calling, Seth. Those are great points. And I have felt that exact same way listening to it. It really has been very enlightening and very positive. I've seen the Republican Party come together like I never have before. I do like the unity, and it does give me hope for the future. And I do like having younger people speak. And when he was talking about younger people, I just wanted to talk about Amber Rose was also, she's very young. She's a model. She's an entrepreneur. She is a mom. She's not the kind of person that you would look at and go, yeah, she looks like somebody that would be part of the Republican Party or part of like speaking at the Republican National Convention. But it was very fun to listen to her because she was a super hardcore Democrat. And she is a woman of color. I'm not sure what she is. She's not white. She's not Caucasian. I don't know what she is, but she has 23 million followers on Instagram. And she was really shocked. She said she was so shocked to hear her father, who
it was her dad that convinced her. Yeah,
20-year veteran, and he was talking about how much he liked Trump, and she was shocked. She goes, "Dad, how could you? He's a racist." And so he's like, "Well, in what way?" So she set out to prove that he's a racist. And then by doing that, she found out that the media had lied about President Trump. And she started to interview tons of his supporters. And she found out like the supporters are not racist people. And as she studied who he is, and it's pretty hard to call him a racist with who he works with, who he's hired, who he's surrounded himself with, who he depends on. I don't know. It's pretty hard. That's a pretty weird racist to me. Like, I just can't see someone being a racist and hiring the people and working around the people that he has. And I think his fruits demonstrate that he is not a racist. But that's what she found in doing. The more she tried to prove he was a racist, the more she realized he's not a racist. And now she is very much a supporter of President Trump. And obviously, because she was there and speaking. But it was very fun. And I think it was also a really powerful message on how the media has been lying about President Trump and spoon feeding who they want people to believe. And it's been working. People have actually been believing a lot of the things that he said. I have a really good friend who I really like, but he was just so thrilled and excited, like he was giddy when President Trump was found guilty, because he's like, oh, I'm so glad, because he's a rapist. I'm like, what the heck? Where did you get that from? And he really believes that President Trump has literally a rapist, has raped people, has raped women, or at least one. And so, and that isn't true at all. He's never even been accused of it, let alone tried or convicted of it. Doesn't even have an accusation of it. And so, but people do tend to believe the media. So that's why our voice is really important. Each of us has to know the truth. Then we have to get out there and we have to speak the truth. We got to talk about it. So did you hear her speak, Dwayne?
I did.
Yes, I did. Yes.
Seth, are you still with us?
Seth is still here. Seth,
okay.
You're welcome to hang on, because I don't have anybody behind you. So
yeah. Did you have anything else you want to share, Seth?
Go ahead, Seth.
I did. I listened to what she had to say, and I think that it spoke to a lot of the way people feel in America right now. And if you ask a lot of normie people how they feel about Trump, they're not going to say, oh, I don't like this policy of his. I don't like that he did that. It's always going to be, he's racist, he's sexist, he's mean. And right. I think that her speech was great to highlight that there's not a lot to back that up except just constant media manipulation. And if you say a lie enough times, it starts to become true.
Yeah. That you nailed it. You say a lie enough times, people really start to believe it. They start to think it's true. Was there anybody else that you want to talk about? Anybody else that you watched that you enjoyed or didn't enjoy?
Yeah, I loved Vivek's speech a couple days ago. I've been a huge fan. I had never heard of Vivek until he announced he was running for president, and I became a huge fan instantly. What I loved about his speech was that it was very positive, and he talked about wanting to unify, and he didn't talk about being a victim. And I think one of my biggest criticisms of Trump after the 2020 election is whether there's validity to the fraud narrative or not. He was perceived as a victim in my mind, and he was kind of whiny. And I didn't want to hear at this convention about how the Democrats are going to ruin your life and it's all doom and gloom. I loved hearing Vivek be optimistic for the future and was promising that if Trump is elected and we have a Republican majority in the House and Senate, that we're going to try to unify the country. And the best way to unify people is through success. And I thought that was very true and very powerful.
You know, I love that. And I think that is where a lot of people who didn't like Trump before, but they lived under his successful term of office, that they are like, yeah, we want to go back to success. We like it. Even if we don't like Donald Trump, even if we don't like his mean tweets, we like living under success and a successful president. And I love that about his. That really stood out to me too, was that success unites. He said success unites. So I thought, you know what? It really does. It really brings us together. When everyone is successful, everyone is happier and pumped. And I agree with you 100%, Seth, that I didn't want to hear victim-y, whiny. I don't want to hear, I would much prefer hear what we're going to do as Republicans rather than what the Democrats are doing. I love that. I think it has been a very positive message.
And my favorite line from Trump this whole cycle is after talking about retribution and revenge. He said the best retribution is success. The best way that I can get revenge on these people is to succeed by bettering America and bettering the working class.
Oh, yeah, I so agree. I think that is such a powerful message, and I think it is resonating with people. You sound kind of younger, and I know he said the Gen Z, I don't know if you're in that category, but somewhere around there. He said the Gen Z will save our country. Will be the generation that saves our country. So what do you think of that? Do you think, is that too much to put on the Gen Z generation? You're what?
I'm 24 years old, and I have a lot of friends that aren't extremely political, but they keep up a little bit. Most of them voted for Joe Biden in 2020 because it was the cool, righteous thing to do. Orange man bad, it was a big retribution against Trump, where now all these same people that are still left-leaning, they're like, I'm struggling to buy groceries. I'm struggling to pay rent. And they've put politics aside and they've all said that they're voting for Trump. And a lot of the people that lean right, that won't vote for Trump right now, are in the boomer generation and some Gen X, because they have houses. They are financially stable and they think that they can afford to not vote for Donald Trump, where I can't. I don't have that luxury. I haven't purchased a home yet. I work hard every day. I work construction. I work long nights just to put food on the table and try to save money to buy a house one day. And under Joe Biden's America, I just don't see that becoming a reality, where I do have hope that if Trump is elected come November, I'll be able to financially support a family on one income.
Boy, that says everything, Seth. And I do agree with you that a lot of people in my age category, they've got their houses, they've got their retirements. They're pretty set. They're not worried. And they don't think that their retirements can be cut in half in a nanosecond either. They don't think that that can happen. And they are not thinking about this next generation, that your generation and even older than you, if you don't already have a house, And if you're trying to raise a family, it's really hard. It's really hard. And yet, back in the time of the founding fathers, when you got on your own, when you got your first job or started a business or you got married, everyone could have a house. It was unheard of to be that just young and on your own that you couldn't afford a house. Not a mansion, but a house. It was the American dream because it was possible for everyone to. And it really wasn't that long ago that that applied. It's very much as of late that you cannot. It's very hard to afford a house. And people, we need to all be thinking more of the future and not just ourselves. We need to think of the future. We've got to vote for our children and our grandchildren. Okay, was there anybody? Because there are several things about Vivek's speech that I thought was really, really important. Like he talked about, because we believe in the rule of law, that we believe in everybody being treated equally, that it's not, it has nothing to do with your race or your skin color or your status, that we believe in the rule of law and treating everyone equally. And that is really how we fix our country.
Yeah, and I think that another really important speech, I'm forgetting his name, but it was on the first day, and he's the president of the Teamster unions. And I thought it was really important that he spoke at the RNC because it really shows that this isn't the George Bush Republican Party. This isn't the country club, elite, more establishment Republican Party. This is the Republican Party that's fighting for people like me who are young and want to work hard and want a piece of the American dream that we've been promised by our parents and our grandparents forever. And for the first time in American history, that's in question. And I want to fight for people like me who wake up in the morning and go to work every day. And I don't care if you're part of a union or not. This isn't the Republican Party of the old guard. And it's been important to me to see that people are actually fighting for people like me.
Well, it was Sean O'Brien, and he's the president of the Brotherhood of Teamsters. And it used to be the Teamsters, the blue collar, the Teamsters, the ironwork, the steel workers. They were all in the Democrat camp, and they've seen what's happened. Even seniors who are on a fixed budget, the economy has just gone down the tubes. I saw a video where a guy he kept track of his groceries he bought from one of the big box stores, and he took the same set of things that he bought, his shopping cart, and from 2 years ago was like $120. He bought the same stuff, put it in his cart. It was $200. I mean, people just are there. And who are the people that suffer the most? The blue collar, the working guy.
Absolutely.
And the working guy and the seniors. Okay, it's bad out there.
Seth, I want to ask you a question. I've been really curious. I'm trying to remember to ask everybody this question. I want to get people's take on it. Do you think, we're all aware that President Trump there was an assassination attempt. It wasn't an accident. It wasn't just like something that happened. It was an attempt to assassinate him. Do you think that it has changed him? Do you see him with a new demeanor? Do you feel like, and I know he hasn't spoken very much, so it's hard to tell, but I just want to get your opinion. Do you feel like that it has changed his perspective on life, how he sees things, how he sees the presidency?
Yeah, I don't want to make too many assumptions just based off.
Right. I'm just asking your opinion. We're just throwing it out there. Yeah, I won't hold you to it.
Just seeing him at the convention, every time it pans to him, you can tell that he has a face of gratitude. And I think it was really eye-opening to him that he does have grandchildren and he has family. And I loved Lara Trump's speech about how he could be golfing and on a cruise ship in the Mediterranean Sea right now if he wanted, but instead he's fighting for us. And it comes from a selfless place, and I think it really opened his eyes that he does have a family that loves him and cares about him, and it's bigger than just him. And he always said that they're not going after him, they're coming after us, and he's just in the way. And he literally was in the way of a bullet. And one of my favorite podcasters, Tim Pool, he put it the best. He said, if Donald Trump can take a bullet for you, then you can show up and vote for him on November 5th. So I encourage everyone to do that.
I like that. I haven't heard that. I like that. Yeah. That's the least we could do is show up and take a vote for him. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to tell, but I feel like he just seems to like carry he's getting the weight of he feels that I respect anyone who disagrees with me, but I personally feel that he was literally saved by God. I feel like, as Ben Carson said, a shield of protection came down upon him. And so I feel like he gets more than ever that he has a divine mission to fulfill here and as the president. So that's just my personal take. I just wanted to get yours on that. So thanks for sharing that with me. I do want to take a minute and I don't feel like I can speak about anyone else and anything else without mentioning Corey Comparatore. I probably pronounced it wrong. Comparatore, the hero, the true hero that gave his life for his family, that was murdered and assassinated by this assassin. And I just want to say, I just want to invite everyone to please pray for his family, that they will be able to feel peace and know that he did fulfill his mission here as a hero. He lived as a hero. He died as a hero. And I just really want to just be sure we mention his name too, because he did take a bullet. So yeah, thank you very much. So those are some great words. I did want to, speaking of Vivek, something that he said that I really, really loved. It was at the very end of his talk when he said, fear has been infectious in this country, but courage can be contagious too. And that's what it means to be an American. And I love that because, it is easy to be afraid of the bullies and those who want to shut us down and cancel culture, but courage is contagious too. And that is truly American. And I love what he said. If you disagree with everything, we can still sit down and be friends. We can still sit down to have dinner, talk to each other and talk it out. And we don't have to agree to be friends and to care about each other. That is part of being an American. What say you? Any thoughts on that, Seth?
Yeah, I took debate in high school, and I really learned that you can disagree with people and not be their enemy. And that's the true diversity. The Democratic Party diversity in every aspect that they do, except for true diversity of thought. We need diversity of thought. That's why we never had any real reform in the Republican Party until the Tea Party, because everyone just was in lockstep. And I love that we're not in lockstep and that we all think differently and that we can all have the same goal at the end of the day, but we can have different means of getting there. And that's how you have innovation.
Excellent. Yeah, that is how you have innovation. Yeah, if everyone's thinking the same, then probably no one's really thinking. So totally true. And that is so American, is that we can disagree. And when you think about the Constitution, boy, it did not come to pass because everyone was thinking alike. They all had their ideas, debated, discussed, maybe argued, you could say, but they came up with these ideas because they had all these different, diverse, and totally, completely contrary ideas. And that's how they were able to come up with such a genius document to govern our nation.
Okay,
So,
we're coming
okay,
we're
well,
coming to the end of the show. We got about another 10 minutes. I'm going to let you go, Seth. Thank you very much for your call.
Yeah.
thanks
And
so
call
much
us
for
again.
calling,
Call
Seth.
us again.
Great call.
We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
God bless America.
Ooh, thank you. God bless America. God bless you.
God
Thank
bless
you.
America. That is correct. Oh man. And Delane, I'm with you. I really think my opinion may be slightly jaded, but I think when Trump dodged that bullet, there were angels. The hand of God was there. I don't know how else it could have happened. I just don't. I don't know. And I don't know what the circumstances are. I don't know what the big story is. I don't know who did it. I don't know why. I don't really care. Okay, and we may never find out what the whole story is with that. But wow.
But a lot is coming out that is very, very disconcerting. That
It's
the Secret
disconcerting.
Service
Yeah.
knew an hour beforehand, and they still let Trump get up on the stage. I mean, there's a lot of information coming out that is very disconcerting. That very much troubles me.
Well,
But
I was 9 years old when Kennedy was shot, and then I remember Reagan getting shot, and I remember thinking, I'm in fifth grade. I'm going, if they can't protect the president, how can they protect me? So I became
right,
very, self-reliant at that point.
right, because they can't protect you, and they're not going to.
They they can't, and they're not going to. Okay, they're just not.
Yeah,
Whoever they
they're
are,
not. They're
the
not capable, and they really aren't going to. They're yeah. There's too many people. This
there's
country
too
was
many
designed
people.
on us protecting ourselves.
Yeah, there's an old adage, a joke about I carry a gun because a cop's too heavy. And
Yes,
that,
too much bother. Yeah,
but I mean, you have to be self-reliant. You have to be. Nobody's coming to save us, except maybe Trump. I don't know.
nobody's.
I just don't know.
Okay, well, our time is just about up, but I do want to just make another really quick comment. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, I did love one of her comments, and she did say, God intervened and isn't finished with President Trump. She's the governor of Arkansas, and she did share I just thought it was really funny because she shared when she took her son at the bring your kids to work day, and she took her son to work, and she's like, I was and I'm not going to do it justice, and I didn't have time to write it down, but how she took her son by the hand and led him around, much like Jill takes Joe by the hand and leads him around. I just thought that was hilariously funny. Did you hear that one?
Yeah. This whole situation with the children, and you see pictures of Trump with his grandchildren, and it just makes you smile because you can tell he loves those kids. I don't know
Oh, of course
why
he
he
does.
came
Yeah.
back and ran again. I just don't know why he came back, and he could have just gone golfing.
Yeah. Well, it really is a huge sacrifice. He's the only president in modern times that retired with less money than others go in and they make very little money, and yet they come out very, very wealthy. And he's getting a lot of donations, thank goodness, but his personal wealth has taken a great hit because he's busy trying to run, and has taken those 4 years to run our country, and he's been under constant brutal attack. And I do feel like we're very blessed, and I just would like to invite everybody to not expect perfection. There are many a leader that God has chosen through the ages that were not perfect people, or even godly people that he used to fulfill his purposes. But it'll be
Well,
interesting to see.
I always go back. I go back to King David. Okay, in the Old Testament,
Exactly.
there was a guy
King David's a
who
perfect
God
example.
picked. He was not perfect. That's for sure. I'm gonna let you
Yeah.
wrap it up and take us home. I'm gonna drop out, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for all your help. Thanks for getting our callers in there. I appreciate you. So yeah, I feel like we're living in such definitely interesting times, but we are living at a time when we really are called to stand up and to speak out. And the most important thing that we can do is get engaged, because we think I'm not interested in politics, but I assure you, politics is interested in you. It is changing your life, it's changing your lifestyle, and we need to do something. I invite everyone to do something 5 minutes a day. We can restore our country and really make a huge difference if we will all engage for 5 minutes a day. So I invite everyone to do that. Find an organization to join, find some friends that get together, learn about the Constitution principles, and learn like what's happening and what you can do to just let your voice be heard. If it's nothing more than contacting your legislators, your House of Representatives locally in Utah, and your senators in Utah, that we can save the state, but we've got to join together and we've got to do something about it, but we can. And I invite everyone to do that. And if we will all just do 5 minutes, it's going to totally change how things are. But I invite everyone to seek the truth, to learn the truth, and then educate other people. Like I say, invite your friends, get engaged, and remember that you are the guardian of your liberty. I hope you have a wonderful day and that you will stand in defense of this great nation and those who have gone before us. Thank you. Have a good one.
And one last time before you end the stream, did you end it?
Oh no, I have not ended up.
Okay, one last
You
time.
are listening.
You're listening to Main Street.
Yes, you're listening
to
KMMU.
Utah, KMMU.
Yes, it's on X, Rumble, YouTube, and our website, kmmu.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Dalane.
Thanks for joining us. Thank you. Have a good one. Go defend our liberty.